2. Ish. Here comes the sun. The sun was just rising over the city and it looked like it was going to be a beautiful day. Perfecto, said Juan, as the sofa appeared in the middle of a roundabout by the Pedro Zulén Central Library in downtown Lima. Muchas gracias por su ayuda, said Juan. Perhaps you'd like some breakfast? My treat, he said. George was feeling a little peckish, as all this time travelling was very tiring for a small bear. The door of the cafe tinkled open as they stepped in. Sitting down at a small wooden table, the waiter came over. Professor Juan, bienvenido, he said. ¿Qué les gustaría a ti y a tus amigos? George studied the menu thoughtfully. How about cinnamon rainbow donuts? They are my favourite thing to eat, said Juan. Posy said that sounded splendid, and she ordered the food in Spanish. She blushed a little as the waiter congratulated her on her accent, as he scurried away to the kitchen. Breakfast over, the two chums said their goodbyes to Juan. Viajes seguros, mis amigos, he said, walking away towards the university buildings. He was jolly nice, wasn't he, Posy? Said George, waving to their new friend. Posy agreed, wiping something sticky off George's nose. Where to now? She asked. George thought for a moment, wondering where he would like to visit next. How about we visit Vuvuzela Spaceport and watch the rocket ships? Suggested Posy, and she knew George liked that sort of thing. George nodded, saying that it was an excellent place to go. Posy dialed in the coordinates and the sofa vanished. George was getting used to traversing space-time as he held Posy's paw for reassurance. He felt just like a great explorer setting out into the unknown. They weren't sure where they were when the sofa appeared, but they could hear water lapping against the side of something. I know where we are, said Posy. It's my dad's boathouse. George looked around as his eyes adjusted to the half-light. Little dust motes skittered absent-mindedly in the shaft of bright sunlight. Sure enough, George could see the little steam launch bobbing up and down in the water. Meow! Came a muffled sound from the coal bunker. George jumped aboard. Spot, he said. Are you playing hide-and-seek again? He asked. Spot just purred and rubbed coal dust onto George's shirt. Shh! I think I can hear someone coming, whispered Posy. The side door opened as bright sunlight flooded in. Quick as a flash, the chums hid in the coal bunker next to the confused cat. Mr. Shortpaw busied himself readying the little boat for a trip upriver. He peered into the coal bunker to check whether he needed more fuel. Luckily it was too dark to see the chums as he closed the hatch. Splendid, splendid, he said to himself, tapping on a gauge. Soon have steam up. As the little engine chugged into life, poop poop, blew the whistle as the water in the boiler came to temperature. The two chums could make out the sound of the water doors creaking open as Mr. Shortpaw piloted the craft onto the river. George clutched up to Posy as he realised they were stuck in there till they reached their destination. More voices came muffled as the passengers climbed aboard. George could make out it was his family. I think we're at the bit where we go to Vuvuzela Spaceport, whispered George. Posy nodded, although she realised he wouldn't see that in the dark, so she just squeezed his paw instead. The rhythmic chugging and gentle swaying of the small craft soon put the chums into a relaxed sleep. Some time later, George could feel something tickle his nose as he tried to brush it away. Opening his eyes as they adjusted to the gloom, he could just make out that it was Spot's whiskers doing the tickling. Hello, Kitty, he said. Spot purred as George stroked him. Hello, George, said Posy. I think we've arrived. They could make out that someone had got onto the launch as the footsteps came towards the bunker hatch. The chums concentrated hard, disappearing as it opened. It's Spot! Exclaimed the other George. Well, I'll be blowed, said Mr. Shortpaw, looking at Spot. How did you get on board? A pair of familiar paws came towards the cat. Carefully, George picked up Spot, and handed it to himself. "Spot!" yelled the other George excitedly. "You're the world's best at hide and seek." Spot just meowed in thanks, rubbing his sooty head into the other George's t-shirt. As the others walked away, Posy waited for an opportunity to slip away unnoticed. Sat behind some official-looking wooden packing crates, the pair could see the rocket ships launching and landing at this busy spaceport. George was in his element as he remembered back to when he was at Vuvuzela previously. George's tummy gurgled. "My tummy says it's supper time," he remarked. Posy agreed, looking around to make sure no one could see them. In the near distance, they could see HMS Essex moored in one of the docks and suggested that they headed in that direction. "Hello, Pockets," came a familiar voice. George looked to see his friend the Admiral walking towards them. "Hello, Admiral," they said in unison. "Still here?" asked the Admiral. "I thought I'd just said my goodbyes to you." George blushed. I see," said the Admiral. Posy was just about to explain the situation when a sailor approached and saluted. "Telegram for you, ma'am," he said. "Thank you," replied the Admiral, opening it. She said. "Looks like a spotted bother on Mars." George glanced towards Posy knowingly. "How about a spot of supper on board my flagship?" suggested the Admiral. George said that it sounded like a brilliant idea. Sat inside the cosy cabin aboard HMS Essex, the Admiral had arranged to slap up tea with lashings of ginger beer. When he had finished his tea, George let out a loud burp. He said, blushing. Posy and the Admiral giggled. "No need to apologise, Pocket," said the Admiral. "That means you've had a good meal." Posy looked outside the cabin's bay window, then checked her watch. "It's getting late. I think we should be heading back," she said. "Why don't you stay the night?" suggested the Admiral. "I still have your bunk bed from the last visit, and you're welcome to stay," she added. "That'd be splendid," replied Posy, yawning. Opening the door, George saw that there was not only the bed, but also a pair of yellow and white stripy pyjamas for he and Posy to wear. "Thank you," he said to the Admiral as she leaned down for him to hug her. "Sweet dreams to you both," said the Admiral. George closed his eyes and dreamt of his wonderful adventures. Posy was the first to wake the next morning. She was busy explaining the principles of thermodynamics and entropic reconstruction associated with time travel to the Admiral, using a small bottle of green ink and a sextant while stood on her desk. Said the Admiral. "So you managed to combine a perpetual motion apparatus with a... good morning. Good morning, Pockets," she said as George emerged from the other room. George yawned, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. "Good morning," he replied. "Posy and I have both eaten already. But what would you like?" asked the Admiral. George thought for a moment. Do you have any honey cakes?" he inquired. "I think I've come up with a splendid solution to return you two back to Honey Grove," announced the Admiral once the chums were ready to leave. "Ooh," said Posy as they emerged onto the flight deck of HMS Essex. "Is that a gyrocopter?" asked George. Sat waiting in front of them like a giant dragonfly was a small, brightly painted two-seater version. "Ooh," repeated George. George and Posy clambered into the front seat as the Admiral tightly secured the lap strap over them. She placed the headset on George and Posy so they could communicate during the flight. Then she took a back seat and went through the pre-flight checklist. Squirrr, went the main propeller as it chugged into life. Slowly it moved forwards as the overhead rotor blades made a whoosh, 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 whoosh noise above. "Flight control from Golf Bravo Echo Alpha Romeo. Permission to taxi, over," said the Admiral over the headset. George could hear the reply. "Permission granted. Safe journey, Admiral. Over." Slowly, slowly, then faster, 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 the gyrocopter sped down the runway, and with a final thwop, 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 it launched off the carrier into the bright blue sky. George held Posy's paw as they flew low over Vuvuzela towards Honey Grove. The scenery blurred greenly, whizzing by over the Moolah River as the rotor blades landed them safely in Squirrel's Folly. Posy and George gave the Admiral a big hug as they said their goodbyes. "See you, next time," the Admiral said with a wink. The gyrocopter swooshed back into the sky as the chums ran towards the boathouse where the sofa was waiting for them. Posy opened the control panel and set the time machine dials. "Here we go again!" They both giggled as the time machine vanished. George wondered where they were going to arrive next. Hopefully it would be somewhere they had been before. As the sofa poofed out of the time stream, Posy looked around to see a large, ultra-modern looking steel and glass factory. It looked a little familiar, although she didn't quite recognise where exactly they were. George could see a sign on the wall that read, "Kencho Automaton." "Posy," said George, pointing, "what does that sign say?" She thought for a moment. "I think it's Japanese, but I'm not sure what it means," she shrugged. George helped Posy as they pushed the sofa into a quieter part of the factory, making sure that no one saw them. "Let's have a look around," suggested Posy. Walking around, they could see all manner of machines and assembly lines busily going about their business. George stopped by one of the machines as it produced a familiar-looking shape. He watched as out of the far end of the metal tunnel emerged a small grey cat. He looked quizzically and paused. "Posy," he began, "that looks a lot like Spot." Posy turned towards the machine and read the notice on it. "Sobukasu Neko," she said. "I think Neko means cat, but I'm not sure about the first word." "Hey, you there!" came a shout from the far end of the factory. "Oh, Lummy!" cried George. Grabbing George by the paw, Posy ran towards the sofa as quickly as they could. Hastily she clicked the dials into place as the chums dematerialised back into the time vortex.